Right, another round of applause for that great film. My name is Shad. I'm happy to be here in support of libraries, in support of this great film. And I'll invite up our panelists, if that's all right, a couple of whom you got to see in this film. Daphna Saper is on her way up. Round of applause. You already heard from Brandon Haynes, the president of the TPL Workers Union, on his way up. Is Jace here? Jason York Best on his way up. You saw him as well in the film. And finally, Carolina Aragao, I hope I'm saying that right, social science researcher for the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Daphna, why don't I start with you? Just to set the table, because I understand you have international experience. You grew up in Nigeria, if that's correct. So is there something that you wish Canadians understood about our library system? Something that we're missing, something maybe we take for granted, just given your international perspective?
I think we take for granted the access that the libraries give us. There are programs, classes, reading material for all ages, all demographics, all members of communities. And there's just so much you can access for free with the library card. It's almost unbelievable. It's not just a place where books are stored and you go to check out books. You can check out Ontario Parks with your library card for free, right? So the access that I think just that one card, and it's free. You live in the city, you go to school in the city, or you work in the city, you automatically benefit from that. Yeah, I don't think, we don't have public libraries where I'm from, so those programs are really mostly around schools, which, not everybody has access to formal education, so it's really good here, and I think, I don't really see people take advantage of it as much as they should.
The film gets a lot into the challenges that you face as library workers. Are there things that you still feel maybe unequipped to deal with that you face on a day-to-day basis? And if so, what do you think is the best way for you to become more resourced, better prepared for some of the challenges that you confront?
I think sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect with community members and employees, like sort of understanding what employees do at the library every day. I think that maybe more conversations need to be had between staff and the public outside of a service being provided. Like, this is really good because we were getting to talk about library workers and the work that they do, the people that they work with. But I think sometimes there's just, it doesn't seem like everyone understands what people do at a library and the services that we provide, and that we're also human. We're not just an employee of TPL. We are extremely compassionate and empathetic and feel things and think about things for hours and days and weeks after it happens at the library. So, I just think that there needs to be a better link between the community and employees.
Yeah. So more education about all of the amazing things that libraries offer, but also the limits in terms of the roles of workers.
Absolutely,
and those boundaries. Jace, maybe a similar question to you would make sense in your role as a safety specialist. What do you feel maybe not totally equipped to deal with, and how do you think you could become better resourced in your position?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
That's a very loaded question.
Yeah, we don't have too much time, so I'm just giving you the big ones.
All right. Before I say anything, I just want to say shout out to all the library workers that I've worked with and the ones that aren't here. I'm shouting out to them. The challenge for me would be there needs to be an honesty with the library workers. I think the library workers need to be told what the library is being transformed into. And if that conversation could be had, then library workers would be better equipped, even myself would be better equipped, because the landscape of community has changed drastically. And by it being changed drastically, we are seeing it. It's just a representation. Individuals are losing homes because they can't afford to live. And the library being one of the last places that's free, that people can just come and be at, they're gonna come and be at. And if that means they got 5 bags, or they have a attitude problem, a behavioral problem, or whatever problem it is, or a struggle they have, that's coming as well. And a library is a place for sanctuary, and anyone in need is gonna come for sanctuary. So for me, that challenge would be can we have an honest conversation of what the library is transformed into, and properly equip people with that, not just training and saying, hey, we're training you and training you. What am I training you for?
Yeah, we'll get into that with Carolina, I'm sure, in a little while. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, though, also, Jace, we've talked already on this panel about the challenges you face as library workers, but I'm curious, if you have any anecdotes about particular people or experiences that are on the flip side of that, on the positive side, that kind of inspire you every day in terms of your work?
I like people.
Yeah.
I like people. So just being able to see someone who's usually not seen, or I shouldn't say not seen, because we actually do see everything we see, right? But to be able to see a person as a person and not the situation or circumstance that they're in, I get that privilege to have conversations with folks that normally don't have conversations, because people either, they want to get away from it. Sometimes the conversations are quite colorful, and it allows you to put perspective in your own life. It takes you to that space where you could be a little bit more grateful for just being able to sit with someone, because a lot of the times, many of us, in trainings that I do with a lot of staff, I try to remind each and every one of us that we're a paycheck away from being one of those individuals. The moment your funding or your job loses its funding, you are desperately going to be staring down that barrel just like that person.
Yeah, you spoke to that really well in the film, and you also spoke really well to Charlene and her legacy. And I was wondering if there's just anything you wanted to reiterate or highlight about her approach to the work.
I believe she's gone because she was an angel and she had to go back. She dealt with people so honestly and genuinely, and even if they were being rude and disrespectful to her, she saw past that. And a lot of times it's kind of hard to see past when someone's being disrespectful and rude, and she could see past the behavior and see the person and see the need. And being in spaces where I would see people come to check in to see, is she there, just so they could tell her where they're at, I believe that is what made me admire her work. I've been doing this work as long, but just to see that, like, wow, you're not jaded, you're not burnt out, like you're still going. It's like it's your first day. We all start bright-eyed, bushy-tailed on our first day. She's been doing it. So hats off to you, Charlie. I'm talking about you. So I would say just her ability to see people for who they are.
Steph and I was sitting beside you in the film and watched you react to Charlene as well. Is there anything you wanted to add about her approach, her work, her legacy?
I think she's probably one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I only got to work at Sanderson one time as a page, and I met her for 3.5 hours. So that's my entire time, and that was more than enough for me to see how she engaged with customers. She engaged with kids, teenagers, adults, older people. She just genuinely has a beautiful soul, and you don't really get to see people move that way through the world anymore. And I think just seeing her in that capacity and seeing how someone can be that way was very inspiring for me too.
Brandon, let's get into some of the bigger issues that this film sort of explores. So you recently settled a round of bargaining, is that right?
Yeah, we just finished bargaining, and we got a new deal in April of this year. So very new. some of the themes that are represented in the movie were discussions that we had during bargaining.
Yeah, I was curious, like, what were the most pressing issues in terms of your workers that you wanted to settle?
Yeah, I think one of them is that there is a rise of violent incidents that happen in the libraries. It's not like, when you say you work at a library, people think, what's the worst that will happen? Maybe you get a paper cut on a book. But unfortunately, we do have members that are like spat on, they're called like racist names, they're harassed. There's all sorts of really terrible incidents that do happen. And so in this last round of bargaining, we really wanted to get more recognition of that and the increased concerns that people have related to health and safety. And we did get some language that kind of strengthened that conversation. But the thing about libraries is that they're open to everybody, but we always say the workers need to be kept safe in order to do their job and to keep everybody else safe. So we don't want to stigmatize anybody. We don't want to imply that libraries are inherently risky places to go to, but there are risks that need to be acknowledged.
Jace was highlighting almost that libraries are the front lines of like a changing society, right? A society that's becoming a little bit more desperate, a little bit more dire. How hard was that to get across during bargaining in terms of just a changing role of libraries?
I think one of the things that we do well from a union's perspective is we really do want to bring the voices of the workers forward because, quite frankly, and I know this sounds strange from a union president, but some of the managers or some of the people that make decisions don't really have that frontline experience. We've really been trying for years to get them to acknowledge that there is an increase of violence and harassment in the workplace. I think they're kind of getting there now because of the campaigns that we've done, bringing forward the stories of the workers. And sometimes it's like slamming your head against a wall, talking to some of these people. They're nice people, but they don't always get it. That, you're doing a story time and you're thinking about an incident that happened the day before, but now you have to perform for the people that are at the program and not getting a lot of time to kind of rest in between incidents that happen or even downplaying incidents, downplaying them, I should say, and not documenting all of them because you just think it's part of the job. And it can be very demoralizing for people. It can be very desensitizing. There's a lot that goes on behind the friendly face that you see at the desk. And, it's just getting very difficult, and we want to continue to make sure that that's being acknowledged.
When you look ahead to the future of Toronto libraries, this is a big question, but what do you hope for and what do you fear the most?
What do I fear the most? There's a lot to fear these days.
Both. I want both, yeah.
The Toronto Public Library system, and you'll probably hear a little bit more about this, but it is the busiest library system in the world. It depends on which metric you use, but definitely the busiest in North America. And, we get millions of visitors that come in every day, but we don't always get to really spend the time that we need serving everybody because there's a huge lineup or because, they have a sign on the desk saying that there's nobody there to help you, so go somewhere else. So really, I would like to see the libraries properly funded. We're fortunate now that we're in a political climate where we do get a lot of support from the mayor, for example, and from some of the city councillors, most of them, I would say. But that can change. We all remember a fellow named Rob Ford. He hated libraries. He said that there were more libraries in Toronto than Tim Hortons, which would be great, but that's not factually true, but it would be great if it was. So my fear is that we're going to continue to struggle and not be able to keep up with the increasing needs that people have. I think there's a lot going on economically in the world that's going to impact the people that come to kind of rely on the services that the library experiences. There's a lot of other funding that needs to be there for social services to supplement the work that we do. And I'm worried that we're getting to a breaking point where if we don't address some of those underlying issues and the root causes of some of the challenges that we face, that we're going to, I don't want to sound too dire, but it's going to be very difficult. So I'm hopeful that they continue to put the money into libraries to provide for staff to, read to your kids or to help seniors with all of their needs, and that continues to happen going forward.
I think that's a good segue, Carolina, to some of your work, your research, as far as the changing role of libraries and funding issues. So when you were writing your report, much more than books, we'll start with what was the most surprising discovery for you in that research?
I think the most surprising thing was looking at how much the library does, right? Because as a library user, there are the things that I normally do, but just amount of programming and effort that like the Toronto Public Library has done in the last years of these different hubs for community development, for learning. For instance, you see all these folks in the cultural industry who uses facilities from the libraries, right? Like libraries provide services for young people who are now facing like huge unemployment levels to like work on their resume. So it's like libraries are this hub for economic growth, right? But they are not treated as such. And I think on the downside, the sad thing was discovering I had access to reports that the union was collecting of like situation in branches and reading through some of the experience that staff was going through, right? That we saw here right now. And yeah, and learning how, as they it was beautifully put it, like they're underskilled social workers, but very overskilled nannies. But I mean, they are being asked to do a job that they literally neither have the training or like resources to do, right? And that is putting them in a very dangerous position. And I think for me, it was very disheartening to like get the grasp of how much this is happening.
And what was the main sort of point you were trying to drive home with your paper?
Yeah, I think the main point for us was to give visibility, visibility to how much libraries, to how much the library has done, to how the big role the libraries do for our community, for the city, expose how amazing the library is, which I think people know, but maybe they don't have a grasp of how much. What it fully represents for our city, right? But in addition to that, I think for us it was very important to tell the story of like libraries have done a lot, and have done a lot in the context of decreasing and stagnating investment. When you consider inflation, when you consider population growth, you see that the resources that are being put in there are just not meeting these needs, right? And that's just looking at like quote unquote a situation that is stable, and we are also seeing that the situation is getting more complex, right? So we were not able to adjust that for those issues. But if you consider that, like the underinvestment is even more pronounced. For instance, the province transfer money for libraries too, but it's like a tiny amount of resource and has been stagnated for like years. So, but the province does like benefit a lot from the libraries doing, right? When the library is helping folks get jobs, that benefits the province from the tax they're getting, but like the counterpart is really not there.
Do you have a vision for how libraries could fit within the broader range of services that are offered, like in a perfect world?
Yeah, I think that is a great question. I mean, I think libraries should and could be a complement to the landscape of social services, right? But they cannot be doing that as a front runner. They cannot be doing it alone. And right now we are seeing that they're doing this because, well, it was beautifully put in the documentary, right? In a city that is very marked by neoliberalism, libraries are one of the very few spaces that folks from all walks of life are meeting up. And that is special, but that's also complicated, right? And that puts librarians and library workers in a situation that they have to deal with, like issues that they have not had to deal with before. So we need more resources for libraries, and we also need more resources for the complementary services they can access, right? Getting like fast help from like mental health professionals, getting fast help for like social workers, having this like connection that can really make a difference in helping them help people.
Yeah, Jace, I saw you in the film interacting with other services in your role. So maybe you could speak to that same question again, like on the front lines. How do you see the libraries interacting with other services in a way that's good or in a way that could be improved?
There are some challenges. When I first stepped into this role, one of the things I advocated for was to have almost like a line by for the library. If I was calling from the library to services, there should be like straight through to services, because I'm a service of Toronto calling another service. Why do I gotta wait like 30 minutes to a half hour while this person is in obvious distress of some sort? I found that to be a challenge. With the library providing some services, I found that they were just shuffling people to the library. go to the library to help you do it. And then the librarian's like, I don't know what this is. Like, what do you want me to do with this? And the person then becomes irate or upset because whatever case manager or whatever agency send them over to the library and said, oh, they'll help you do it. And then the library doesn't know that that's what's happening. And I think that's what I mean about having that honest conversation on what the landscape of the library and the ideal of what people are being told about the library and what the library is representing. I think library workers need to be in on that conversation as well. They need to hear it and be like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do? And then give them a choice, right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just like, I'm gonna throw this and this is your dinner kind of thing.
I definitely want to make sure we have time for audience questions, but maybe we'll go with a quick round for everybody. And just a response to the film. Is there a moment that in the film that resonated with your experience as a worker or your experience in terms of your research or advocating for workers? Is there a moment that sort of stood out as kind of representative of your experience or just touched you in some way? We'll start with Daphne.
I think probably, I mean, seeing Charlene's face pop up there on the first, that first scene was, yeah, I definitely felt goosebumps. Just because she has sort of become like an icon. While she was alive and in her transitioning to an afterlife, that, yeah, there are good people in the world. Like this, and I feel like people complain so much about Toronto, the TTC, the streets, the parks. Oh, they're getting overrun with this and that, but library workers really get to see how like that unfolds and the difficulties that displaced people are facing. That's just one example, but yeah, I think it made me feel that little feeling of there is hope in the world, and she was a good person, and there are people like her in the world, and hopefully people like her that inspire others to continue to be that kind of person.
Yeah, people doing the work, for sure. Yeah. Brandon, to you.
All of it resonates for me. I can't really pick out one moment. I've worked at the library now for over 20 years, which sounds it's funny to say that out loud, but I also worked very closely with Charlene, so seeing her was emotional. Charlene was a union representative when I started out kind of wondering about the role, and she actually nominated me for my first union position like over 10 years ago, so very personal connection to Charlene, but also she does embody, I think, everything that library workers strive to be, and we can't always do it. We try our best, and sometimes we have our moments when we're just not keeping up with trying to serve the community as much as we would like to, but for me, just seeing her face was a visual representation of all the work that we strive to do for the community, but we need support to do that work, so.
Just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned 20 years with Toronto Public Library. How would you describe the changing role of the library in terms of a timeline? Has it accelerated in the last 5 years, 3 years? Has it been gradual over the course of your career?
I think it has changed a lot. I think, I don't remember who told me this, but whatever happens in the community kind of trickles over into the library and vice versa. If there's like a school shooting or something, or if there's like an event that happens, you kind of feel the effects of that in the neighborhood. I think one of our busiest years was 2008 when there was a huge recession, so that kind of catapulted a lot of everything. When people said when the internet comes around, there's going to be no need for a library. And we've seen the opposite of that, because now with the internet, we are doing more to support people using the internet than we've done in the past. So it's hard to really pinpoint when things have changed, but I would definitely say in the last 10, 15 years, it's really shifted a lot. So.
And Jace, any particularly resonant moments with you for the film?
No, I think they did a good job of capturing a day in the life of a librarian, Charlene, myself, and individuals of the community, most definitely.
I think actually there was a moment that Jason was mentioning that libraries are a space that it doesn't matter where some folks lay the ground to build the libraries, and there were other parts of the city and they're seen as not welcome really resonated with me, because I think libraries are probably one of the few spaces that these people feel that they are welcome and that they can access, right? And this is just so profound, but I think we need to recognize that all the complexities and and the investment that needs to be due to this for this space that's sacred to remain so.
That's great. Round of applause, please. So I want to make sure we have time for your questions. It's great to see such a great turnout for the film, and I'm sure there's some curiosities, some pointed questions for the panelists. So feel free, don't be shy. There'll be a mic over there that can come to you.
Hey, I was just wondering, Jason's idea about renaming the Sanderson branch after Charlene. I'm wondering if there's any movement to do that. I mean, do we even know who Sanderson? Does anyone know who Sanderson was? Like, is there a movement to make that happen?
I couldn't be honest. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I think the library board has a naming policy that they've just changed, so there may be a way to do that, but yeah, that's something that we should probably, because a lot of people have actually suggested that, so that's maybe something for me to look into, if there's a way to try to do that. That's one of our libraries.
You know what? I can be a traveling mic too, because
Yeah.
So I'll go to one side.
I'm really interested in the notion of community and hub, and whether there are success stories in Toronto, like communities where the library is integrated with a community health center, integrated sort of effectively with other supports within the community, in a way, Jason, I guess, that deals with some of the things that you're talking about, where, 30 minutes on a phone online trying to deal with someone who's in crisis.
The success story would probably be the relationships that I've built in other LSSs, and they used to be the SSTs, but now they're the SCSSs. The relationships that, I know, you're from the library, so you understand the acronyms, but the success would be those relationships that we've built so that we can actually call places and they're like, oh, okay, you're at Lillian, oh, you're at Sanderson, oh, they know, and we can get a faster response. And not only a faster response, but more of a warmer response. And a lot of the outreach teams are familiar with what's happening in the library. So what I've seen more so is individuals making more stop-ins. Just checking out, how's things going on? You guys okay? Is there anyone here? Rather than just not knowing that the library exists with incidents that people need help.
We can take turns.
So I noticed that the film and you all well encapsulate that there are some political issues at the forefront. So I guess my question is, the issues that don't exist in a vacuum, that are political, that we need to name, as you said, or even just the ideas of neoliberalism, I was glad to hear, like, none of this in Toronto exists in a vacuum. The housing crisis, our inflation problems, the way we deal with people who are vulnerable, these are inherently political, and I feel that it is very hard to place a name and a responsibility to what is, like, as library workers, we are told not to be too political, not to be, it feels a bit like at times we're pushed to not name exactly who's at fault or not to recognize the upstream issue. So my question is, how can we bridge the reality that our issues are political with the climate of people who would prefer if we did not do that?
I think that's a question for me, maybe. So usually when people hear about unions, there might be a strike going on, or like someone's negotiating for wages and benefits and those things, which are all very important. But I think part of our, I would say, strength as a union is that we have advocated for libraries because we know how important the services are to the people that we serve. It's about the workers, but also about maintaining those services and enhancing them. We do a lot of different types of campaigns. So, for example, I don't know if everybody knows, but they do have 2 small libraries in the city that are staffless for certain times of the day, meaning that you just swipe your card, you go in, and there's nobody actually there, like a human being, to help you. We did address that in bargaining, and we got them to kind of squash that and at least not expand it to other libraries, but because that's one of the few places you go where you can actually interact with a human and not always have to be looking at a screen. But we do a lot of that political work. We work with the mayor's office. We work with counselors that are friendly enough. And I think there's a power in the collective voice of unions and the workers that can band together and kind of advocate not just for a particular collective agreement, but just on an ongoing basis, and that benefits the people that use the library. And I will say, I shouldn't tiptoe around it. I'm very disappointed sometimes in our employer because they don't really have that same political thing in them. I guess they can't really do the same thing that we do in a certain level, but especially during the Rob Ford years where there was a threat to close, I think, a third of libraries in Toronto. We launched a campaign against that and we fought back against it, but I didn't see a lot of support from the management side in terms of advocating for why there shouldn't be cuts. And if you look at other services, for example, the police, whenever there's a talk about the police budget, you do see, to their credit, people that are working for the police board, talking about the impact of those cuts, right or wrong, but we don't really see our employer doing that, so it's up to the union sometimes to take that role. I don't know if I answered your question, but I know where your head is at, I think, so.
Sort of torn watching this because I was of two minds. One was, of course, you folks shouldn't have to carry so much of this and shouldn't have to do so much of it. At the same time, you do it really well. And it's interesting, I'm not a library worker, I can be political. Jason, looking at your approach compared to, say, a police officer, right? Even though you do have this mandate of keeping things safe, or, hearing the nonchalance of, there's drug paraphernalia in the bathroom. That's something you have to deal with, that's something you take care of, but it's not, there isn't this pro-clasping, distance from reality that I see in a lot of other spaces with people who deal with all kinds of folks, including vulnerable people in our city. And so I guess what I'm curious about is, no, librarians and library workers shouldn't have to do this, but what's in the water? Why do so many empathetic, thoughtful folks end up in this field, and what could others in other sectors maybe learn from it?
Okay, I'll give it a try. I think what you may see is an increase of people applying to work at the library because there's a lot of cutbacks in the social service and the mental health field. So you'll probably see a lot more empathetic individuals. But you have to be somewhat empathetic if you're a person that can provide information and knowledge to someone who's seeking. And being able to understand that someone is looking for a direction and you can say, I know it's over there. And that's at the base, in my opinion, when I observe librarians. I'm not a librarian, I am not from a librarian background, but when I observe librarians, at the very core of each individual that I observe is that empathetic care of, I will show you where to go.
Can also add a little bit to that and just say that a lot of library workers actually live in the city of Toronto. As unaffordable as it is, we find a way to try to live here if we can. So literally sometimes you're serving a community that you might live in and you recognize the people that go there, they're your neighbors or your friends. So it's hard not to care. There probably are maybe one or two uncaring library workers out there, but I don't think I've ever met any of them. And it's one of those professions, I guess, that attracts people that naturally have that empathy, but also I feel like some of those types of workplaces, the workers aren't really given the same respect as in others, because they kind of just expect you to care, and that's enough if you just care, right? And you don't get kind of, more recognition for that. But anyway.
I think there's someone in the back there. Go ahead.
Oh, there you go. It's working.
Thanks again. I thought a good panel. Really enjoyed the film. Shad, I thought you did a great job of directing questions and extemporaneously too. Really like that point about access. And one of the things I'm wondering, I'm kind of blending in the TTC, Tim Hortons, and McDonald's into areas in our society where people who are struggling, and there's many other words one can use, are they being downloaded or just allowed for places like libraries and TTC to take care of it? And I know people struggle with that. I know a person who lives like a 5-minute walk from the Vaughan Metropolitan Center. And she won't take the subway anymore because now she has a new child, and she works like less than a 5-minute walk from Yonge and Bloor. That subway can do that. How does one deal with the compassionate responses, but also trying to balance the totality of the reality that other people too can feel safe? And then are these people getting the sufficient services they are at a library, at the TTC, at fast food restaurants? Is there a better way to deal with that? It's almost like it's being thrown in your lap in some ways, but also how do you balance the compassion that we're celebrating?
So I guess you're talking about a day of like what I just came from to come here. That's a regular day at work. It's balancing what the library should be, what I know it to be, and what it's becoming, and trying to find that middle ground so that everyone can feel belonging in the space and being that, you could say, translator of the languages of need.
But no, sorry, I was gonna jump in to also say, but I think that's also part where community plays a role, right? And the role of like not just being a user of libraries, but supporting libraries. Like if like talk to your local librarian, like chat with like what are the issues that are facing in this branch? Like what do you feel that you could get more resources? And like I think it's a little bit on all of us to like chat with our city council if it's not one of the most friendly ones, right? Like doing that little bit advocacy, pressure your MPP to see if the province can also do something about it. Like so I think if you're seeing the struggle, I think it's also important for us as like members and users of those services to help the library and all the social services we care about.
I'm just going to add to what she said. I think that a lot of libraries are situated in communities. Like I'm from Parkdale, worked at Parkdale. Shout out to Parkdale staff, love you guys. And I've lived all over Toronto, and I feel like Parkdale has probably been the neighborhood in which I felt the strongest communal sense. People really care. Like I know the grocer's name. I know the person who runs the laundromat. They come into the library. I see them with their kids. Their kids come to do Leading to Reading at Parkdale. I see them on the TTC. There's just always a sense, for me, I feel very safe in Parkdale. I hear people say things like, oh, I couldn't live in Parkdale. Parkdale is so... But you feel that way because you're removing yourself from the community. You're making yourself an individual that is not part of this community. If you are in it and you're understanding and being compassionate, I think it's very hard to feel unsafe. Especially when you're seeing perspectives and seeing other people's lives, not just your own and not just about your own safety. There's a lot of privilege that we walk around with that a lot of other people don't necessarily have. And I think being conscious of that, especially as society's problems sort of, keep getting larger and larger, just being conscious of that is really, really important into relating with people and not just saying, oh, this neighborhood is this or this neighborhood is that, or I'm not going to use that line because I feel very unsafe using it. I get people feeling unsafe, but there's just also more underlying perspectives to it than just, oh my God, I don't feel safe.
I really appreciate all the insights you're sharing with this audience and that the film illustrates so well. And this may be a simple-minded line of questioning. Given the central function of the library as an educational institution, and what about education in the schools? Because I think they have social issues that are similar to what the library is facing, and able to perform its a crucial role in society. Is there some liaison that you can work out a partnership with the teachers and librarians can work together in the future and do more to better society?
I can jump in on. So we already do some of that work, but I hate to tell you, but the funding for school libraries is abysmal. It's like terrible. They've cut that as well from the provincial level, so that's one of the challenges that I know school libraries are facing in Ontario. But yeah, we already have, I think, pretty good partnerships with teachers and with educators, and there's class visits that are arranged. There's like kindergarten outreach and things like that. So I think working together is a good idea, but. There's also challenges, as you mentioned, because like sometimes there's not even a school library that's properly funded. So we gotta find a way to maybe work together in a different way.
So unfortunately, there's not time for more questions, but thank you so much for the questions that you had. Thank you again to our panelists, please. Round of applause. And now I believe it's time to hang out and imbibe and enjoy. So there's a reception just on the main floor there. If you find one of the volunteers on your way out, you can grab a drink ticket. And there will also be pizza. Not just because it's delicious, but because it means something. There's actually a moment between Charlene and some of the library patrons that involved pizza, and so that was an intentional choice to commemorate that. So please stick around and enjoy. Again, one more round of applause for the film, for the panelists, and for yourselves.